So Diablo 4 will have a lot more exciting legendaries compared to what we've seen in the open beta. In fact, Blizzard just confirmed a lot more ongoing changes that we should expect for the full launch, including to legendary drop rates, XP rates, class balance, and a lot more. Also, a big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video, but more on that in just a little bit. Starting things off with the legendaries, one of the game's directors had this to say about them. I don't think folks realize how many more legendary powers exist beyond what was on display during the beta. There is a lot of bizarre, exciting, and totally balanced legendaries to discover when the game goes live in June. Good to note is Blizzard also confirmed the drop rates were adjusted during the test weekends too, so that the players, and I quote, get a fuller experience and better tests during the beta. This is of course not new, as many other games out there do this all the time during their testing phase. It gives both the players a taste of the end game without spoiling anything, while the devs also get their data that they need from that. Similarly, leveling rates might not be the same in the full game, with one tweet saying that the game balance is a journey, not a destination, when being questioned about XP rates. So fully expecting the leveling speed to also be adjusted, not only because it just took a couple of hours to reach 25 in the beta alone, but it also makes sense if you look at the whole map in Diablo 4 and the fact that the beta was merely a fraction of it. Most exciting, of course, being that part about the legendaries and the fact that the full game has a lot more interesting options. I believe that the beta kinda skewed a lot of new players' perception of what this genre has to offer in terms of interesting effects, especially since the ones we've seen in the beta so far were like usually boring and uninspiring, like low-level stuff, percentage increases, boring effects and whatnot. But yeah, this genre and like Diablo as a whole has a lot of very interesting effects that you can take from the previous games. Again, fully expecting the endgame ones, which we haven't even seen a fraction of yet, to completely change that. But War Thunder is one of the most comprehensive vehicle combat games available to play on PC, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5 and the previous gen consoles. There is a collection of over 2,000 highly detailed vehicles to choose here, from tanks, planes, helicopters and ships that span over 100 years of development from 1920 to the present day. There's something for all playstyles here, and you can test these in intense PvP battles, from fast action-packed matches to more realistic tactical battles. The game even offers one of the most dynamic and detailed vehicle damage models, including an X-ray mode and authentic sound effects for those who really enjoy the extra immersion like I do. So definitely check out War Thunder using my links below to get a huge free bonus pack, including multiple premium vehicles, account boosters, and I'll give another big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. That being said, a few Blizzard reps also talked about class balance, especially now that classes like the Druid or Barbarian are kind of being trashed in most conversations for feeling weaker than the rest of them, at least at these lower levels. Now, one thing that these two classes had in common in the beta was the fact that neither of them had full access to their specific class specializations, which the Rogue, Sorcerer, and the Necro kinda all did for the most part. Like for example, Barbarian, we didn't even get to unlock the technique slot, yet some players were already able to pull off really crazy damage numbers with certain builds at just level 25, and I'm talking about close to 500,000 just in the beta. Druids even less so, since this is the only class that did not have any access to its specialization, the Spirit Attunement, since its class-related quest was on the completely different side of the map. For all we know, max level could look completely different, and personally I feel that Druid was not that bad once you reach level 25 and got a lot more gear going. For example, the Overpower Pulverized build, this was one of my favorites. Great range, great stun potential, great damage, especially if you got the 260% damage buff from one of its legendary aspects. There are some interesting unique legendaries this class has too as well. Some of them were already data mined, and it seems that there are, in the later stages of the game, ways to permanently change Druid forms and stay in those forms to get the benefits out of them. Or some of them that completely change certain skill categories to completely new ones, like one of the werewolf attacks to become a storm attack instead. So really interesting to see the direction they go in with these hybrid kind of builds in the end game. Now, one thing that's slightly worrying to me is Blizzard's stance on character respec, which it seems they want to be prohibitively expensive once we reach the true endgame. Not sure if they still have the same opinion, but given the fact that this interview they mention it in is just a few months old, they likely still are.
Say at level 50, there's going to be a point in time where you go like, oh, I would like to be a different barbarian, but it's too expensive to undo everything I've done. It's actually better for me to roll another barbarian and start a new one and go fresh. And we wanted that notion that, like, cheap in the beginning, so lots of experimentation. Do I like fire? Do I like ice? Do I like lightning? But then, wow, I got, once you get up there, you're level 90, you're going like, I think I'm just going to, I think I'm not going to try to spend a million, whatever it's going to be to undo all these skills.
So from what I understand, Blizzard will let us change builds around as we level up and let us experiment with different loadouts and different aspects. But once we reach the true endgame, this is when things will become prohibitively expensive. I believe that at some point 1 million per respec was mentioned, maybe an arbitrary number, but they definitely want us to dedicate a whole character to one single playstyle, which I think has a lot more drawbacks than it has upsides. So much so in fact that it's probably going to be better in their opinion to re-level the same class again than to dedicate resources to respeccing. Now, I'm not sure about you, but if true and not just miscommunication on their part, that sounds counterintuitive to everything they've been trying to do with the skill tree in the first place. Sometimes you just want to switch things up and try other builds. I don't see why you would need to restart the whole process just for something so basic. Plus, what happens if they decide to nerf your build eventually? Does that mean you're now going to be forced to start a new character? Because I can see a lot of players not being too happy about such a decision. Again, maybe the wording was nonsensical. I just don't see Blizzard forcing people to re-roll the same class again whenever they try a new build. Maybe it's going to be super expensive, but I'm still expecting it to be possible nonetheless on the same class via farming essentially, since things are going to be expensive anyway in the endgame and will require tons of farming. In any case, there's other details and changes coming up, some of them for the skeletons. For example, in this case, they will be fine-tuned, not gameplay-wise like nerfs or buffs to the damage, but just visual changes, if you can believe that. So this is mostly to reduce the glow that makes them super unappealing, but also there's a bug that caused necroskeletons to show up in towns, so that's going to be fixed for launch as well. There's more info on the world player limit, so limits are going to be different depending on the area, as it's being confirmed by this tweet, with world bosses being limited to 12 people per instance, but the number can be smaller in the overworld or larger in town. Also, for the ultra wide screen peeps, yes, this is going to be fully supported, but not the super ultra wide, which will have the black bars on the side. So it seems that this is going to be intentional and not an engine limitation, as confirmed by a different thread. I do wonder, however, if this has anything to do with the really busted sorcerer teleport that seems to benefit a lot from ultra wide screens in covering much longer distances and sometimes even completely skipping over inaccessible terrain. Actually, a bug discovered during the recent beta that will likely be addressed in the full launch, but I do wonder if there's anything related to that for the super ultra wide that they cannot do. In any case, many other fixes are coming too, such as the Eastern Gate in Kyovashad for some reason would not let a lot of players get out of the town via that area, including me, so that's a common bug that Blizzard is looking into. At some point, it was also discovered that the installer also had support for direct storage, and we already know that we had the DLSS in the beta. So direct storage is really interesting because it helps a ton with loading times on the PC. It might not sound like a big deal, but when you're trying to optimize farming runs, not having loading screens longer than they need to will make things a lot easier. And before you ask, no, mouse and keyboard support for Diablo 4 on console will not be a thing, at least nothing beyond what the console already supports natively. And definitely check out War Thunder using my links below to get a huge free bonus pack, including multiple premium vehicles, account boosters, and I'll give another big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. And yeah, that's about it with today's Diablo 4 news roundup. Totally let me know down below if the demo also got you more hyped about the game than before or not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.